welcome back to English from A to Z.
It's great to be back, and today we have something special lined up.
We really do. This deep dive comes directly from a request we received from you, our listener. You shared some incredibly dense material philosophical texts, complex policy briefs.
Yeah, a formidable stack, actually. And looking through it, we saw this recurring theme, didn't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Situations where, standard everyday English just doesn't quite cut it. It fails to capture that exact shade of meaning you need for this kind of high-level analysis.
Exactly. So we're moving beyond just like conversational fluency here.
We are. We're talking about equipping you with C2 level vocabulary.
And let's be clear, this isn't just about sounding intelligent or fancy.
No.
It's really about giving you semantic tools, specific words that allow for incredible nuance and, well, pinpoint precision.
Our mission today, fundamentally, is about cultivating what you might call intellectual agility. The ability to really articulate subtle distinctions, complex insights, things that, frankly, everyday language just struggles with.
Think of it like upgrading your mental landscape to high definition. That's a good way to put it, I think.
Yeah. When you're grappling with these sources, intricate legal arguments, nuanced moral philosophy, you need words that can actually bear the full weight of that complexity.
You do. So today, we're diving deep into the very essence of these words. We'll look at their origins, their specific applications.
And crucially, the often subtle differences between words that seem similar but carry very different weight.
Right. So to start, we've grouped our first set of words around the nature of knowledge itself. Specifically, how we talk about information that's difficult or perhaps hidden or maybe ultimately crystal clear.
Okay, let's kick off with the first one, abstruse. It's a word that immediately flags something as a significant intellectual challenge. What's the real difference between something just being complicated and being truly abstruse?
That's a really key distinction. If something's complicated, maybe you just need more facts or a clearer diagram.
Right, assembling furniture. More steps doesn't make it abstruse.
Exactly. But when a concept is abstruse, we're talking about ideas or theories that inherently demand profound, sustained intellectual effort. The difficulty is sort of baked into the material itself because of its intrinsic nature.
So it's not necessarily bad writing or poor explanation.
Not necessarily, no. It's the subject matter. The Latin root, abstrudere, actually means to conceal or to hide. It captures that sense of inherent hiddenness, something resistant to easy understanding.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think about quantum physics, which came up in one of your sources, concepts like wave-particle duality or quantum entanglement. These ideas really defy our everyday intuition, our macroscopic view of the world.
Right, you can't just see it.
No. You need abstract mathematical frameworks just to begin describing it. They're abstruse because the universe, at that fundamental level, just doesn't operate in a simple, directly observable way.
And historically, you see this pattern with big paradigm-shifting ideas, don't you?
Absolutely. When Einstein first proposed special relativity, for many people, even physicists, the concepts were incredibly abstruse. They broke so radically with the established Newtonian framework.
It takes time and often clever analogies and popularization to bridge that gap.
It does. So using the word abstruse signals to your audience, okay, buckle up, this isn't light reading. This requires some real cognitive lifting.
Got it. So moving from that inherent difficulty, let's talk about intentional obscurity with the word cryptic. This feels different, more like a choice.
It does feel much more personal, doesn't it? Cryptic carries a strong whiff of mystery, maybe even deliberate concealment.
Yeah, it implies information presented in a deliberately enigmatic or encoded way. It forces the recipient to actively try and decipher some hidden or unspoken meaning. The obscurity feels intentional.
And that comes straight from the Greek kryptos, meaning hidden. So if you get a cryptic voicemail saying, the eagle lands at midnight, you're not pondering deep philosophy.
No, you're immediately thinking, what does that mean? Is it code? A warning.
Exactly. It triggers this interpretive response. It sparks curiosity, maybe confusion, even bewilderment sometimes.
But here's a question. If someone chooses to be cryptic, isn't there a risk? Don't they risk just sounding pretentious or maybe just like a bad communicator?
That's a really valid point. Choosing to be cryptic is a risk. It can work if there's a very strong shared context. Think about inside jokes between friends or historically wartime codes like the Enigma machine. There, obscurity was vital.
Right, a necessity.
But in general conversation or writing, if you're being cryptic without a clear purpose, you're basically putting a potentially unnecessary burden on your audience. It invites misinterpretation.
Which could have serious consequences depending on the context.
Definitely. Okay, so we've had inherent difficulty, abstruse, and intentional obscurity, cryptic. Now let's consider esoteric. This word seems to bring in the idea of exclusivity.
Yes, that feels like the key differentiator here. Esoteric points to knowledge or language or practices that are really only intended for or understood by a small, specific group, an inner circle.
Exactly. And for the people in that group, the information might not seem complex or abstruse at all. It might just be efficient shorthand.
Right. But for anyone outside that circle,
It's baffling. Utterly baffling. The Greek root, esoterikos, literally means belonging to an inner circle.
so this is the language of specialized fields, like academic philosophy subdisciplines, or maybe highly technical hobbies.
Perfect examples. Think of competitive coding forums or discussions about vintage watch repair. Terms like algorithmic complexity or escapement types are basic building blocks for insiders.
But total jargon to the rest of us.
Right, and this creates a linguistic barrier. It fosters community and allows for deep, efficient discussion within the group. Sure, they can skip the basics,
Wow.
but it simultaneously limits the broader impact of that knowledge. If a critical scientific breakthrough is only discussed in language so esoteric that policymakers or the public can't engage with it,
Then its practical value is severely limited.
precisely. So esoteric isn't just about complexity, it's about the social function and sometimes the social limitations of specialized language.
Okay, that's a really clear distinction. So after wading through the difficult, the hidden, and the exclusive, let's pivot to the absolute gold standard of effective communication. Cogent. This sounds like the goal.
It really is the pinnacle of reasoned clarity. Cogent goes way beyond just sounding persuasive or confident. It describes arguments that are undeniably clear, rigorously logical, and just intellectually compelling.
So a truly cogent argument, it kind of leads you inevitably to the conclusion.
That's the feeling, yes. It presents its case with such well-structured evidence and logical flow that the conclusion feels almost inescapable. It leaves very little room for reasonable dispute.
The Latin root, co, meaning to compel or to drive together, really captures that. There's a force to it.
There is. It implies a kind of intellectual inevitability. Think of a lawyer presenting a closing argument that makes a cogent case. It's not just emotional appeal.
No, it's built on solid evidence.
Meticulously backed by verifiable facts, presented with crystal clarity and structured to avoid logical fallacies. When you call an argument cogent, you're praising its intellectual architecture, its logical soundness, its persuasive force based on reason.
It's basically the highest compliment you can pay to a piece of reasoning.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, that wraps up our first cluster nicely. Abstruse, cryptic, esoteric, cogent. They really map out that whole spectrum of communication effectiveness, don't they? From obscure to compelling.
They do. Now, let's shift gears completely. Let's look at human dynamics specifically, how people respond to demands, pressure, authority, conflict.
Right. And we've all been in that situation, haven't we? Where you disagree internally, but you just keep quiet. That feeling is captured perfectly by acquiesce. It's not just giving in, is it? It feels more like reluctant acceptance.
That reluctance is absolutely the core nuance. Acquiesce describes a yielding, often passive, often silent, without open protest. Crucially, it suggests there's internal disagreement or reservation that's being consciously suppressed.
The Latin root, acquiescer, meaning to rest or to remain quiet, fits that perfectly.
It does, and it often speaks volumes about the power dynamics in a situation. If you acquiesce to your boss's questionable plan,
You're probably doing a quick, maybe subconscious cost-benefit analysis.
Exactly. Is voicing my dissent worth the potential conflict or negative consequences? Often the perceived cost outweighs the benefit, so you strategically, silently retreat.
It's such a useful word because it captures that unspoken tension.
Mm,
When is acquiescing just a necessary tactic, a way to survive a difficult situation?
right. Versus when does it slide into just passive acceptance that maybe erodes your own sense of integrity or agency over time? It's driven by calculation or necessity, rarely by genuine agreement.
Okay. So if acquiescing is that quiet internal submission, then capitulate feels much more dramatic. It sounds like a definitive end to a struggle.
It is. Capitulate signifies a definitive stop to resistance. It means surrendering completely, yielding after a period of real, concerted, often quite public struggle.
So unlike the quiet compromise of acquiesce,
Capitulation is an active decision to stop fighting, usually because the will or the resources to keep going are just gone.
the history of the word is interesting too. From Latin capitulum, meaning chapter, which hints at drawing up formal terms of surrender.
Yeah, you think of military conflicts ending or maybe intense corporate battles. When one company finally capitulates to a hostile takeover bid, there were likely weeks or months of fierce fighting legal teams, market maneuvers leading up to that final surrender.
So the key context is that preceding struggle. It had to be prolonged and hard fought.
That's essential. If someone just gives in immediately, they're just yielding or maybe acquiescing. But if they capitulate, it implies they fought hard until they simply couldn't fight anymore. The word almost elevates the defeat by acknowledging the effort involved.
Okay. But what about the opposite? What if someone just digs their heels in and refuses to budge, refuses even to consider alternatives? That sounds like intransigent.
Yes, intransigent takes stubbornness to another level. It captures an unwavering, almost absolute refusal to change one's position or even negotiate. It emphasizes inflexibility, particularly in high-stakes situations.
It sounds like it often comes from a place of deep conviction.
Often, yes. Or perceived moral necessity. The position becomes non-negotiable. The etymology is quite literal. Latin and transiger, to come to an agreement. You literally cannot come to an agreement with an intransigent party.
Like in tough negotiations, maybe labor disputes.
A classic example. If a union remains intransigent on core safety demands, they're signaling that these principles are simply off the table for compromise. It shows a profound unwillingness to find middle ground, and it often leads to deadlock.
It definitely sounds stronger, more formal than just calling someone stubborn or pig-headed.
Much more formal, yes. It implies a considered, fixed position.
And what happens if that refusal to bend turns into active, outright defiance, kicking back against the rules? That sounds like recalcitrant.
Exactly. Recalcitrant adds that crucial element of actively resisting authority or control. It's not just being unwilling to change your mind, it's active, stubborn defiance against rules, instructions, or power structures. It's like insubordination in action.
I love the image from the etymology Latin recalcitrare, to kick back, like a stubborn horse resisting its rider.
It paints a vivid picture, doesn't it? You might talk about a recalcitrant teenager defying house rules or a recalcitrant prisoner refusing orders. It escalates the situation into a direct challenge to authority.
So the difference between intransigent and recalcitrant is really about action versus stance.
Primarily, yes. An intransigent negotiator simply won't agree to terms. A recalcitrant employee might actively sabotage a project they disagree with. Recalcitrants often involve immediate disruption, a direct challenge to order.
Okay, these four words, acquiesce, capitulate, intransigent, recalcitrant, give you a really precise toolkit for analyzing how people behave in conflict or under pressure.
They really do cover the spectrum from quiet yielding to outright rebellion.
Right. Let's completely shift focus now and explore qualities we generally admire, high moral and intellectual virtues. Let's start with a fundamental one, benevolent.
Benevolent feels foundational, doesn't it? It describes actions and intentions that stem from an inherent, genuine desire to do good for others. The focus is on intrinsic kindness, deep compassion.
It comes from Latin, bene, Well, plus veli, to wish. So, wishing well. A benevolent ruler isn't just not cruel, they actively work for the welfare of their people.
Precisely. The core meaning is about a deep, sustained commitment to others' well-being without expecting personal gain in return. It's about the inherent goodness of the intent.
Okay. Now, how does magnanimous build on that? It feels like it adds a layer of nobility, grandeur.
I think nobility or greatness of spirit is exactly right. Magnanimous implies generosity and critically forgiveness, often on a grand scale, especially when you're in a position of power or dealing with a rival or someone who has wronged you.
So it's about rising above petty feelings?
Yes, rising above grievances, pride, or the urge for revenge. The Latin root is wonderful. Magna, great. Plus animus, soul or mind. Greatness of soul.
Can you give an example?
Imagine an athlete who loses a really hard-fought, maybe even bitter, championship match, but is genuinely magnanimous in defeat, sincerely congratulating the winner, praising their skill.
That takes real strength of character.
It absolutely does. It requires overcoming personal disappointment and acting with grace, especially from a position where you could be bitter or resentful. That context of power or rivalry makes magnanimity particularly notable.
Okay, I see the distinction. Now, what about munificent? This seems focused specifically on the scale of the generosity.
Exactly. Munificent emphasizes the sheer lavishness, the abundance of the giving. It describes generosity that goes significantly above and beyond what might be normally expected, making a substantial, often transformative impact.
The focus is purely on the scale and effect of the gift itself.
Right. The etymology links to gift-making. Latin munus, gift, plus facere, to make. We often use it for philanthropy. A munificent donation isn't just large. It's the kind of donation, say, hundreds of millions for scholarships or a new research wing, that fundamentally changes things for a whole community or field.
So, quick recap. Benevolent is the good intention, magnanimous is the noble spirit, especially towards rivals, and munificent is the sheer scale of the giving.
That's a perfect summary.
Great. Now let's shift from moral character to the virtue of effort. How about assiduous? That sounds like diligent, hard work.
It is, but it's more than just hard work. Assiduous implies exceptional persistence and unwavering dedication, combined with great care, thoroughness, and meticulous attention to detail. The work isn't just done, it's done to an exceptionally high standard, consistently.
The root assiduous means attending constantly. That fits.
It does. Think of a researcher working for years on a complex problem. Their assiduous efforts involve not just long hours, but painstaking attention to detail, checking every data point, refusing to cut corners.
So it's the combination of persistence and meticulousness.
Exactly. Commitment to accuracy, perseverance through setbacks.
And if that persistence becomes almost superhuman, relentless, tireless, that sounds like indefatigable.
That's the word. Indefatigable literally means incapable of being fatigued, impossible to tire out. It describes sustained, relentless effort, often over a very long or arduous period. It speaks to resilience, stamina, sheer willpower.
Both physical and mental.
Often both, yes. An indefatigable campaigner working around the clock for a cause, or an emergency responder going for days on minimal rest. It conveys this almost inexhaustible reservoir of energy and inner strength.
So while assiduous highlights the meticulous quality of the work, indefatigable emphasizes the sheer quantity and duration of the effort, the inability to be worn down.
Well put.
Okay, moving from effort to intellect. Sagacious. This sounds like more than just being smart.
Oh, much more. Sagacious implies profound wisdom. It encompasses keen mental discernment, sharp insight, exceptional foresight, and consistently good judgment based on that understanding.
So it's not just intelligence, but the application of intelligence and experience.
Precisely. It suggests an ability to grasp complex situations, understand the deeper currents, and anticipate long-term consequences. The Latin sager means quick-witted or having acute perception.
You might describe a respected elder statesperson or a mentor figure as sagacious.
Yes, someone whose sagacious advice helps navigate tricky situations, not with quick fixes, but with guidance born from deep understanding, historical perspective, and sound judgment. True sagacity blends intellect, experience, and practical wisdom.
A very high compliment. Now let's end this section with a slightly tricky one. Fastidious. This feels like it can be good or bad.
It absolutely can. It's a double-edged sword. Fastidious means being extremely attentive to and concerned about accuracy and detail.
Which can be incredibly positive, right? You want a fastidious surgeon or a fastidious editor proofreading a critical document. Precision is essential there.
Definitely. Meticulousness is a virtue in many contexts, but the negative connotation is strong too. The Latin root fastidium actually means disgust or loathing, hinting at the hard-to-please aspect.
Oh, okay. So when does it tip over into being negative?
When that attention to detail becomes excessive or misplaced. Think of the dinner guest who is fastidious about tiny, insignificant details, the exact placement of the cutlery, a microscopic spot on a glass, to the point where it makes everyone else feel awkward or judged.
Or the manager who is so fastidious about minor formatting issues that they slow down important work. Micromanaging.
Exactly. The line is crucial. Commendable thoroughness is valuable. But fastidiousness becomes an irritating flaw when it focuses on trivialities at the expense of the bigger picture, or social harmony or efficiency. Context is everything.
Got it. So let's transition again. Now we're looking at a selection of words describing more challenging traits or perhaps deceptive practices, behaviors we often need to critique.
Right. Let's start with outright aggression. Belligerent.
That one feels quite clear. Belligerent means hostile, aggressive, ready, even eager for a fight or argument.
That eagerness is key. It's not just anger. It's an outward display of a combative attitude. The Latin root bellum means war, which tells you a lot.
You see it sometimes, unfortunately. The belligerent person shouting in public or the overly aggressive commenter online.
Yes. Their attitude is immediately confrontational. It implies an active desire to engage in conflict, often with little real provocation. It just instantly raises the tension.
Okay. From physical or verbal aggression, let's move to a specific kind of verbal style. Bombastic. This sounds like hot air.
That's a good way to think of it. Bombastic refers specifically to the use of inflated, pompous, high-sounding language that actually carries very little real substance or meaning. All show, no go.
Designed purely for effect.
Purely for superficial effect. The term might come from bombast, which was apparently cotton padding used to fill out clothing in the past.
Ah, so implying words used to puff up something that's actually insubstantial.
Exactly. You often hear bombastic language in political speeches, lots of grand, vague promises, eloquent-sounding phrases, but completely devoid of concrete policies or practical details.
So calling something bombastic is a critique of its substance, not just its style.
Precisely. It highlights that critical gap. You're pointing out an attempt to mask a lack of genuine insight or content with rhetorical fireworks. It's a useful word for critical analysis.
Definitely. Okay, next up, caustic. This one sounds like it stings. It has that double meaning, right?
It does. Literally, caustic means corrosive, like acid eating away at something.
But figuratively, at this C2 level.
Figuratively, caustic describes remarks that are sarcastic, but in an exceptionally bitter, sharp, and cutting way. The intent is clearly to wound, to criticize severely.
The Greek root caustikos means burning. That fits the feeling.
It really does. A merely sarcastic comment might be witty, maybe even playful. But a caustic comment is designed to hurt. It leaves people feeling uncomfortable, maybe even attacked. It has a malicious, destructive edge that goes far beyond simple irony.
You can feel the difference. Okay, let's tackle a really serious pair. Perfidy and its necessary counterpart, contrition. Perfidy sounds like deep betrayal.
It is. Perfidious is significantly stronger than just being dishonest or unreliable. It suggests a profound betrayal of trust, deliberate treachery, a grave breach of faith, often with malicious intent. It's reserved for the most serious forms of disloyalty.
The Latin perfidus means faithless. So we're not talking about forgetting an appointment.
No, absolutely not. This is the spy's perfidious actions against their country, or a partner's calculated betrayal in a business deal. It captures the gravity of a cold-hearted violation of allegiance or trust.
And the proper response if someone commits such an act, or any serious wrongdoing, is contrite.
Ideally, yes. Contrite means feeling or expressing deep, genuine remorse or guilt. It's a sincere acknowledgement of wrongdoing, far more profound than just saying sorry. It implies true repentance and a desire to make amends.
The Latin root contritus means ground down or bruised, like a heart crushed by guilt.
It's a powerful image. When you describe someone as truly contrite, you're affirming the sincerity and depth of their remorse. It's really a prerequisite for genuine forgiveness or reconciliation after a serious breach.
Right. Okay, shifting back to attitudes, let's look at supercilious. This sounds like looking down your nose at people.
That's exactly the feeling it captures. Supercilious describes an attitude of overt arrogance and pronounced condescension. Behaving or looking as though one feels fundamentally superior to others, often with a kind of haughty disdain.
The Latin root is great. Supercilium, meaning eyebrow. Literally the raised eyebrow of disapproval or superiority.
Yes. It's often communicated non-verbally. That slight supercilious smile, the way someone might look you up and down dismissively. It's all about subtly, or sometimes not so subtly, making others feel small or inferior.
It's a particularly unpleasant form of arrogance because it's about establishing hierarchy through attitude.
Very much so.
And finally, in this section, a trait that can sometimes overlap with fastidious but maybe focuses more on showing off knowledge, pedantic.
Right. Pedantic describes an excessive, often ostentatious, concern with minor details, obscure facts, or overly rigid adherence to rules. And crucially, it's often done in a way that annoys others.
The focus isn't really on accuracy for its own sake, but more on correcting others or displaying knowledge about technicalities, often at the expense of the main point.
Exactly. Nitpicking over substance. The word comes from the Italian pedante, meaning a schoolmaster, which originally wasn't necessarily negative, but it took on this sense of being overly concerned with trivial rules or details.
We've all met someone like that, haven't we? The person who constantly interrupts conversations to make pedantic corrections about grammar or pronunciation, completely derailing the flow.
Yes. The nuance is that line between commendable precision, like being fastidious when needed, and irritating pedantry, where the focus on minutia becomes an obstacle to effective communication, collaboration, or just basic social rapport.
Okay, that makes sense. Now for our final section, let's explore words that describe larger phenomena, things related to time, perception, change, sound, and abstract stakes. We start with things being out of sync. Anachronistic.
Anachronistic describes something belonging to a period other than the one it's depicted in. It's chronologically misplaced, historically incongruous. It often creates a jarring effect, a sense of cognitive dissonance.
The roots are Greek. And against, plus chronos, time. So against time, like seeing a smartphone in a movie set in ancient Rome.
That's the classic example. It shatters the illusion, highlights historical inaccuracy, but can also apply to ideas or objects. A very old-fashioned policy still in place in a modern company could be called anachronistic. Or even a physical object, like you mentioned earlier, a manual typewriter in a cutting-edge tech office feels anachronistic.
Whether it's an error or intentional, maybe for comedic effect, the point is that feeling of this doesn't belong here in this time.
Precisely.
So from things lasting too long in the wrong era, we go to things that barely last at all. Ephemeral.
Ephemeral means lasting for a very short time, transient, fleeting. It's often used quite poetically, especially for moments of beauty or profound experiences that feel more meaningful because they're so temporary.
The Greek root ephemeros means lasting only for a day, like the beauty of cherry blossoms.
Perfect example. Or a stunning sunset, a fleeting moment of inspiration, the laughter of a child. These are ephemeral experiences. The sense of poignancy often comes from that awareness, this is beautiful and it won't last. It makes you appreciate it more intensely.
Right, and the opposite of that fleeting quality would be burgeoning. That sounds like rapid positive growth.
It does. Burgeoning describes something growing or developing rapidly, often with a sense of flourishing, like a plant putting out new shoots. It signifies swift, robust expansion.
You hear it used for industries, trends, populations?
Yes, exactly. Its origins relate to a bud opening quickly, so you might talk about the burgeoning tech scene in a city, or a burgeoning field of research. It implies dynamic, significant growth, usually driven by favorable conditions or new opportunities.
Okay. But growth and change aren't always steady or predictable. Sometimes things are capricious. What does that imply?
Whimsical unpredictability. Capricious describes something, often a person's mood or decisions, but sometimes events like the weather or the stock market given to sudden, unaccountable changes. There's a distinct lack of rational basis or consistency.
It comes from Italian capriccio, meaning a sudden whim or start.
Yeah.
So a capricious boss might change project directions daily.
Yes, causing chaos and anxiety. Or you might talk about capricious weather patterns, making farming difficult. It highlights instability and the difficulty of dealing with influences that don't seem to follow clear logic or rules. It makes planning very hard.
Definitely. Okay, moving towards more positive signs. How about auspicious? That sounds like a good omen.
It does. Auspicious indicates or suggests a positive and successful future outcome. It means promising, favorable, conducive to success.
The history is interesting, isn't it? From Latin auspects, a bird seer who looked for omens in bird flight.
Exactly. So if a new project gets off to a flying start, maybe securing funding easily, getting great initial feedback, you describe that as an auspicious beginning. It frames positive early signs as indicators of future success. It speaks to that human desire to find meaning and hopeful signs.
Right. Now let's explore sound dynamics. Language has some great C2 words for sound. First, the unpleasant one, cacophony.
Cacophony is a harsh, jarring, discordant mixture of sounds. It's often loud and overwhelming, the complete opposite of harmony. The Greek roots are kakos, bad, plus phone, sound.
Like rush hour traffic, car horns, sirens, engines.
A perfect example of cacophony. Or maybe a room full of people all shouting at once. It vividly captures that feeling of sensory overload from unpleasant clashing noises.
And the beautiful contrast to that is mellifluous.
Ah, yes. Mellifluous emphasizes sweetness, smoothness, and a musical quality in sound. It's exceptionally pleasant and agreeable to hear. It flows beautifully.
Like honey, right. Latin melon honey,
Yeah.
plus fleurs to flow.
Exactly. You'd describe a voice as mellifluous if it's rich, smooth, resonant, and just effortlessly lovely to listen to. It captivates the listener with its sonic beauty.
And then there's sound used for forceful expression, vociferous.
Vociferous describes someone being loud, insistent, and forceful in expressing their opinions, demands, or feelings. There's often an almost aggressive intensity to it. The Latin roots vox, voice, plus fere, to carry, literally mean carrying the voice strongly.
So protesters being vociferous in their demands.
Precisely. They want their message to be heard, to be unambiguous, impossible to ignore. It's used when speech needs to cut through noise or indifference with sheer volume and conviction.
Okay, great distinctions there. Moving back to internal states, let's talk about ambivalent. This seems much more precise than just saying someone is undecided.
It really is. Ambivalent describes the state of having mixed, conflicting, or contradictory feelings or ideas about something at the same time. Both feelings are present and often quite strong, creating an internal push and pull.
The Latin roots ambi both plus valere, to be strong, suggest the strength lies in having two opposing forces active.
Exactly. You might feel genuinely ambivalent about a job offer overseas, excited by the adventure, but also sad about leaving family. It allows you to articulate that complex, nuanced psychological reality, which is much richer than simple indecision.
It captures that internal tension very well. Okay, next. Stories or claims that are widely believed, but maybe not true. Apocryphal.
Apocryphal refers to something, often a story, anecdote, or piece of common wisdom that is of doubtful authenticity or questionable origin, even though it's widely circulated and often accepted as fact. Think urban legends or certain historical tales.
The story about George Washington and the cherry tree is often cited as apocryphal, right?
A classic example. It probably didn't happen, but the story persists because it serves a cultural purpose illustrating honesty. Apocryphal tales often stick around because they're compelling or tap into shared beliefs, fulfilling a function beyond strict factual accuracy.
Interesting. And finally, we reach a word that almost brings us full circle, acknowledging the limits of the very thing we're discussing, language itself. Ineffable.
Yes, ineffable. This is specifically used for emotions, experiences, beauty, or spiritual awe that are so overwhelming or sublime that they seem to transcend the power of human language to describe them adequately.
Unutterable, from the Latin ineffabilis.
Exactly. Standing on a mountaintop at sunrise, witnessing an act of profound love or sacrifice, experiencing deep spiritual connection, these moments can feel ineffable. You can try to describe them, but words fall short of capturing the full depth and impact.
It's a fascinating concept, but using a word like ineffable, we're actually acknowledging the boundary of words.
Precisely. And paradoxically, acknowledging that limit can sometimes deepen our appreciation for those experiences that lie profoundly beyond mere articulation. It points towards the sublime, the transcendent.
What a way to conclude the list. So, bringing this all back to you, our listener, mastering this kind of vocabulary, it's not just about sounding more eloquent externally, is it?
No, it really isn't. I think it's fundamentally about expanding your own internal capacity for nuanced thought. Each precise word we've discussed, from the meticulousness of assiduous to the inherent difficulty of abstruse, gives you a new, sharper lens.
A lens to perceive, analyze, and articulate the complexities you're finding in those advanced sources you shared with us.
It's an internal upgrade, really. We've covered such a huge range today, from defining complexity itself to understanding compliance and defiance, to recognizing virtues, critiquing flaws, and describing these large-scale phenomena.
You now have the tools not just to say what happened, but to describe precisely how it happened, why it mattered, the exact quality of an action or an argument or an experience.
So the challenge now is to put them into practice. As you continue reading and engaging with complex ideas, don't just passively recognize these words. Try to actively feel their specific weight, understand their power,
And then consciously, confidently start weaving them into your own discussions, your own writing. Aim for that precision in expressing your own thoughts.
Absolutely. And here's a final thought to maybe mull over. When you consciously choose a precise C2 word replacing a more common general term, how does that single word choice actually reshape your own internal understanding of the situation or idea?
That's a fascinating question. What new complexities or connections do you suddenly see just by having the right word for them? It suggests vocabulary isn't just descriptive, it's analytical.
It can be profoundly analytical. That's definitely something worth thinking about. We really hope this deep dive has sparked some aha moments for you.
And maybe given you a renewed appreciation for just how rich, powerful, and precise the English language can be when you explore its higher levels.
Right.